In asking these questions, I really want to get some freedom from the ancient conceptions of all this. I mean, come on, the ancients had crazy ideas about everything. And it was commendable because with force of will, they were sort of stepping up out of a totally silently intuitive framework to putting words on the intuition so they could get a handle on them. And then we worked on them a couple thousand years, and I love ancient philosophy, and I love the ancients, and there's a lot of structures and archetypes to remember and learn from. But let's face it, we need to look at these questions without all the baggage. And I don't want to consider every poet's nuance on the concept of will, all at once. We can go through them one at a time. Let's categorize some of that as artistic analysis and stuff, but break down some technical concepts for ourselves. If I was trying to get a handle on like my own lust, how do I think about it? I had some experiences. Where did that feeling come from? I'd keep a journal of when I had those feelings. I'd start collecting data. When I had hundreds of entries, I would hope to see some patterns, and I would. Of some sort. I think it's pretty much assured, maybe through apophenia ultimately, but real patterns as well. I mean, useful ones, let's say, rather than real. Useful patterns. And that's what I'm saying for a concept of will. Let's not stick in with everything. You can't say, well, will is supposed to be this agent, this dualism, so if you believe in will, you believe in dualism. No, let a non-dualist person come along and argue for a kind of will that doesn't have to be defending some ancient dude's notion of what it would have to be. So for will, I'm saying we have the sensation of feeling like we're choosing. I think that's the important part with will and free will that we're getting into this debate through. So let's focus on the choice. We feel like we have choice there. Lots of them are probably wrong. I gotta get this. Important call. Probably. Now for consciousness, the basic source experience from our materialism and stuff, not from the history of philosophy, is the subjectivity of me experiencing myself as such, getting all of that sense input, correlating it myself, and this in a frame, in a background of believing that other human beings are having their own version of this similar kind of experience. Meaning this experience is unique but can be characterized in this way and thought of as similar in this very general way of, well, it's happening, and it's made also for humans, I believe. We're sharing visual and all the sense spaces, including even the more abstract sense spaces like hunger and lust, where you feel these feelings and they don't tell you that something's red, but they tell you a condition of the body, you react to them. And it's all different spaces. Okay, that you are receiving these spaces and sort of are this data processor of them. That's a separate question from whether the choice is genuine. Right? And that's the deeper, more interesting question, is why is there an observer to be fooled, or fooled and illusion is the wrong word? You should get that. That, I feel, is less something I'm supposed to demonstrate, because I have a solipsistic epistemology. That means I'm willing to argue for certain kinds of knowledge based on this experience I have. If that experience is the same for you, then my argument should be compelling for you. But if you're just an automaton, I know I can't prove that. So it's just more fundamental and about honesty of what do you know and what can you admit. If you don't know anything about that process, can you admit it's because you haven't been introspective to it? I remember when I was in 7th grade once, and we went into the first or second grade room. The kids were gone, but we were using that. Somebody came and talked to the class, and they had all this, kindergarten-y type stuff around. And one thing they had was construction paper, a train, and it was the train of thought, and it had a series of words or thoughts in it. And I was thinking, this is one of the things I like to do. I can see my own thoughts and watch that train of thought go through my mental landscape. And I love that. I love watching and figuring out how that works, because I act out the results of it, and yet it comes from a void so often. And I found you can push the limits of that void way, 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 way back. And there's always going to be some void, because at some point the brain doesn't have the particular inputs to get more information or the deductive power to deduce it out. But it's way, way, way out there compared to how most of us are living. So, I mean, the honesty is either to admit and describe what you've seen, whatever your potential ulterior motives or your commitments to certain ways of looking at things. Just put it out there. Well, it seems like this, it seems like this. You can say, well, it's an illusion. I figured out it's this other thing, but it seems like this, but I've also, it seems like there's an illusion about that. And just put that all on the table, because it's a primitive enough science that's worked from some raw data. And, or, if you don't see any of that stuff, then, well, I think conference report, I see you're introspective. You see these things going on. I'm Nick, who, you know, the modern mystic, come on, I could tell the kind of person that is introspective and has seen some of these things, okay. But, you know, against the argument, and people like my dad that are literally like, no, I don't have any internal voice, what are you talking about? Well, then enough honesty in his case to realize, I just don't look there. Yeah, there's probably something inside the cave, but I don't go inside the cave. Yeah, there's probably something in the trunk of my car, but I just never open it. You know, and that's okay, but then don't start telling me, you know, the trunk is empty, or you know that's where, you know, something is, you know, right? Okay, push that metaphor a little bit too far. But I think we can just break down to the agreed upon material or material style, you know, what we agree that is at least a shared consensus for those that we're living in a shared dream, or a material indeniability, or even a concrete absolute like the objectivists think, whatever. There's a phenomena there, right? And there's a subjective phenomena, and we can admit that it's happening and seems certain ways. We'll find certain commonality, and that is the part that's consciousness, why we're having this first person. It doesn't matter what everybody's thought. Now, I also want to, just like my own thing I found is important, is I want to distinguish. People confound self-consciousness, like, I'm a person and I'm doing this, with consciousness, being an observer versus the extra thing of knowing you're an observer. Right now, when I use the word consciousness, I could use another word or an adjective with consciousness if you want, but I am talking about being an observer and having that stuff. I'm not talking about being like humans where we figured out, hey, look at that, we're an observer. See, I'm a human going, look at that, we're an observer, I want to explain it. But when I was a monkey or chimp or lizard or whatever stage of development, I was an observer, but I didn't have the part that could go, hey, look, I'm an observer. Okay, so I think the answer of what makes us an observer will apply to animals and creatures that don't have the capacity to ask the question of why they are an observer, but they are an observer. Okay, that's my premise, that's my position. All right, just trying to explain it more than to convince, but yes, cheers.